The charges are very serious. The Republican Party has always been the party of national security, about supporting the defense forces. That has been kind of like their message for the longest amount of time. Now, literally any kind of stand that is anti-Trump seems anti-Republican. Now, to an extent, tell me, what is the situation within the Republican Party that, given the grave nature of these charges, given the fact that time and again we've got reports from Jared Kushner to Ivanka Trump about when it comes to their security clearances, it poses a huge intelligence challenge for the United States government when it comes to securing high-level information, given the fact that Jared Kushner and even Donald Trump were sharing such sensitive information with foreign agents and foreign assets. Despite all of that information coming out, despite all of the conversation that he had with Zelensky before the war, and all the hearings we had regarding that he was trying to influence a foreign government to take action against his then political opponent Joe Biden, all of that information. But if you are standing against Trump, you are persona non grata in the Republican Party. Imagine the state of affairs when it comes to American politics, that you can get away with all of this.
It's a very sad state of affairs. I really have to completely agree. Imagine if in India, an official, be it a prime minister, former prime minister, any high official, had taken crucial national security documents about India's military capabilities, about the nuclear capabilities of China and Pakistan, about vulnerabilities of India or China or Pakistan, had taken them, had refused to return them, even when it was discovered that he or she had them, had then tried to hide them from the government, had lied about all of this. Imagine what would have happened in India or in most other countries if such an official had done that. You know that there would have been a strong outcry against that. But the nature of US politics, of our political culture these days, has been altered in two ways. First of all, in the eyes of many Trump supporters, he simply can do no wrong. He made the observation several years ago that he could shoot someone in Fifth Avenue, the major road in New York City, and he wouldn't lose any supporters. And history since then has tended to prove him right. Second, in terms of policy preferences of many Republicans, it's gone from strongly anti-Soviet Union, strongly anti-communist, strongly anti-Russia when it's been an imperialist power, to a great deal of toleration of Putin and what Putin has done in Ukraine in terms of his invasion, in terms of the atrocities there. The party is split along those lines to some extent, certainly in the leadership, but there are many members of the base who will support Donald Trump, right or wrong, through thick and thin, almost no matter what he does. Let's hope that if these allegations are proven true, and he hasn't come to trial yet, let's hope that that population turns against him, that base turns against him. But that's by no means assured.
Absolutely, by no means assured. But at the same time, Mr. Golub, Trump has not been a successful Republican leader. You know, he was a one-term president. Even in the midterms, he wasn't able to consolidate the base of the Republicans. He lost Georgia to the Democrats. Regardless of all of that, there still seems that base that is intact within the Republican Party to support him. Is the situation that he is the only Republican leader right now who can rally a pan-America base as compared to any other Republican leader? Is that the situation the party finds itself in?
Well, the irony is that he may well be the weakest Republican candidate who could be nominated. If he's nominated next year, he may be the weakest candidate to go up against President Biden, because while he commands a good chunk of support within the Republican Party, more than any other single candidate, in the general voting population, he may be the weakest. So it's kind of a dual analysis that we have to take into account here of which population we're talking about in terms of his popularity.
Right. But at the same time, as you were pointing out, a lot of red states like Georgia was such a heavy red state. And in the Senate elections, all those Republican voters kind of drifted towards the Democrats. And to an extent, all those Trump picks, they lost. And it was a huge blow to them in the Senate. Is there a fear within the Republican Party? Let's talk about the moderate Republicans and the moderate Republican base as well. Is there a fear that if Trump, and he is the front runner in the Republican Party on the race towards the White House, that the moderate Republican voter would prefer a Joe Biden in the White House as compared to a Donald Trump? Mr. Golub, I want that question for you.
Oh, yeah, they're not just a moderate Republican voter. There are some very conservative Republican voters who, nevertheless, as a matter of principle, have refused to go along with Trump and Trumpism. I have a very conservative friend who I've known for years and years. He and I have argued about just about every issue under the sun. But when it comes to Trump, we're in complete, well, I shouldn't put my own opinion out there. Let's just say that when it comes to Trump, he's extremely anti-Trump, and he will vote for Biden. He did vote for Biden last time around. So it's not just moderate Republicans. Having said all this, and also taking account of your very good observation that Trump has been a weak leader of the party's performed poorly under him in terms of his own election or failed re-election, as well as the subsequent national races. Having said all this, a week or a month is a long time in politics. If we have this discussion a week or a month from now, and who knows, maybe we will, or something like it, the calculus could be different in terms of new developments. And we won't really know for sure about how this is all playing out politically until the primary season starts early next year, when state primaries begin to indicate how Republican voters are feeling about Trump or DeSantis or Haley or Pence or others. So what we can deduce today is something along the lines of what this discussion has been. But as I said, down the line, the whole calculation, the whole situation could be different and lead to different analyses.
Right. But at the same time, whenever I've seen American elections, Mr. Golub, it's always been which party can mobilize its base the best. It's about which party can get its base excited when it comes to going to the polling booths. I remember when Joe Biden won, the base was excited. The Democrats were excited because they didn't want Trump to return. I think they could have voted for almost anyone to an extent. On the Republican side, to a great extent, what happened was there was a fatigue within the Republicans as well, and which is why only the MAGA base went out to vote for Trump. The moderate Republicans, which kind of gave him the edge against Hillary Clinton, they did not vote for him. They didn't give him a shot after 4 years. That's what I feel. But now if we look at 2024, when Biden has to take on, let's say, a potential Donald Trump. Sanjay, I want you to come in on this. Donald Trump still can excite the MAGA base to come out and vote. And at the end of the day, let's face it, between the Democrats and the Republicans, the game is the swing states. To a great extent, the other states, the ones that are already in their control, they end up voting for their respective parties, regardless of who is on the ticket. The main action is in the swing states. Florida, you have Wisconsin, you also have Pennsylvania, you also have Arizona. That's where the fight comes down to. And what we are understanding when it comes to the opinion polls among the Democrats is that the Democrats are not too excited about Biden. So do you think, given that situation, given all this hoo-ha around Trump's legal trouble, which is jazzing up the MAGA base, you could see the Democrats lose momentum, and in that case, Biden lose momentum, and Donald Trump only gain more and more energy as we head towards the primary season, as Stephen Golub is pointing out?
Well, you're quite right. Biden is not immensely popular among the Democrats. They seem stuck with him, and the overwhelming view seems to be, on the strength of indications so far, that, well, we would have preferred better, but if Biden it is the one that we will vote for. But that will be to the advantage of Republicans only to the extent that the Republicans can get themselves sorted. There are a number of candidates in the fray, and there are a lot of questions about the leading candidate, about Trump. And quite rightly, you point out that Trump has managed to prevail in the face of odds. If you were to think of reason and logic as you and I might see it, Trump may never have been elected in the first place. But there is a point beyond which we can't read past patterns into the present situation and to project them into the future. The reason is that this case seems to have crossed the line. It seems to have passed a point We're talking here about national security, about what the US might do if it were to be attacked, what were its options, what are its weaknesses, what are its plans, including nuclear options, dealings with states that are seen as threats, dealing with allies. These are very critical matters, and there has been a gradation of secrets, as we've seen in the indictment: top secret, secret and confidential. Top secret is described as documentation or evidence that could have grave consequences, and you had 11 top secret documents that were found in the storage room at Mar-a-Lago, a storage room to which there was access from the swimming pool there without a locked door in the way. Once Americans see that kind of security being compromised in this manner, we might see a change from past patterns of support for Trump.
Right. So you might see past patterns, not working out in Trump's favor this time. But Mr. Golub, I want to ask you that question as well. As my colleague Sanjay was pointing out, that this case seems to have crossed the line. Now, I've been always wondering what when it comes to Donald Trump is crossing the line, because he's crossed the line so many times, not just as president, but even before he was president. In your opinion, are we at an inflection point in the Republican Party, as Sanjay is pointing out?
I wish we were. I think Sanjay delivered an excellent analysis. He may well be right. But as you pointed out, we've seen this before with Donald Trump, when we thought, for example, before the 2016 election, he came out and on video, he admitted that he was in effect molesting women whenever he wanted to. We thought he would lose the election because of that. He didn't. So this is, in terms of the threat to national security, in terms of what all Americans, including Republicans, have cared about, this really should push the calculation over the line. But you had the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, saying today that, well, or it was yesterday, that, well, look, some of the files, yeah, they were held in the boxes in the bathroom, but maybe the bathroom door was locked, or something absolutely ridiculous like that. So until we actually see the proof in terms of dropping polls or actually poll results, or in terms of the vote next year, we have to be cautious. The primary votes to decide the Republican nomination next year, we have to be cautious in terms of how this may all play out. And let's bear in mind also that in terms of the MAGA audience, they're not necessarily, or probably not, operating within the same informational universe that many other folks are, be they folks abroad or be they many people in the US. They're operating within a universe of people on TV or radio or online who are telling them Donald Trump can do no wrong, that these charges were made up, or that they really are overestimated how serious they are. They're also being told, look, there are many more serious matters we should focus on. There is and will be a tremendous amount of a great attempt to deflect attention on the part of Trump supporters, and maybe to try to influence other folks to focus on issues that are much less important, such as these Hunter Biden allegations that have been circulating for years, and that Sanjay rightly pointed out are not that nearly in the same ballpark as the Trump national security violations, if the Hunter Biden violations are even worth taking seriously at all. So there's going to be a lot of misinformation, disinformation spread out there to try to deflect attention away from what Trump has apparently done. And we'll see whether the disinformation attempt will succeed.
Right, and we're getting some breaking news also, Sanjay and Mr. Stephen Golub, that Donald Trump has been arrested at the federal courthouse in Miami and will soon be arraigned on charges related to mishandling of classified documents. Trump's aide and co-defendant Walt Nauta has also been arrested, fingerprinted, and processed. The criminal charges in the Justice Department's classified documents case now escalates this legal jeopardy for Donald Trump as we are heading towards the 2024 elections. So he's been arrested at the federal courthouse. Stephen Golub, your first reaction: he has been arrested. Is the MAGA base going to go crazy, basically? And will the Republicans, now it's a moment for the Republican Party, isn't it? Even for his contenders in the Republican Party, do they stand with him, or do they now cut him out of the Republican Party? it's that moment is now upon the Republican Party, because Donald Trump has been arrested now at the federal courthouse.
Well, my very first initial reaction is, even though we've been discussing this here and among other friends, colleagues, whatever, the fact that you just said that a former president of the United States has been arrested really hit home. Even though I knew this intellectually, this is going on, that he's been arrested in terms of a turning point, or the word arrested being used, and you used it quite appropriately. In terms of this being a turning point, it kind of remains to be seen. And to circle back to where I started, a lot can hinge, unfortunately, really, on whether Judge Cannon issues rulings that are very favorable to Donald Trump. She could conceivably, for example, say the trial won't be held until after Election Day 2024. And that could really affect all the legal and political calculations here regarding Trump's case. So that's one of many ways in which she is such a crucial, vitally important actor. Having said all that, I don't think we're at the point yet where we could say everything is blowing up in Trump's face by any means. This may be the start of that process, but we'll just have to see how this all plays out. And one other thing I should mention or emphasize regarding Florida, Florida is the state where in 2000, what was called the Brooks Brothers riot, a bunch of well-dressed, suit-clad George Bush supporters disrupted the count of votes in Florida, which may well have led to his ultimate victory in that very, very close election against Al Gore that year. I'm not saying that we're getting Trump supporters flooding into the courthouse. They won't be able to do that, presumably, or disrupting the court proceedings in a way that will cause the whole trial to be called off. That absolutely won't happen. But on top of everything else, you've got some very strong, animate, maybe even rabid Trump supporters who are prepared to demonstrate, to cause disruptions, and to really turn up the heat on both the legal and political situations that Trump's indictment and trial are involved with.
Right. I'm also getting this. Trump also took to his social media before heading to court, and he has said, one of the saddest days in the history of our country. We are a nation in decline. So Trump, of course, actively playing that victim card, even though he's not on any known social media platforms. Sanjay Suri, he still launches his own social media platform, still gets the same media attention. And now he's also saying that one of the saddest days in the history of our country, we are a nation in decline. He was waiting for this to happen to play this card, wasn't he?
Well, from Trump, this is broad rhetoric of a repetitive kind. What is very telling is that through all this rhetoric, which we've been hearing over the past several days, he has not addressed any of the specific charges in that indictment that has been publicized. Everyone has seen it. He has seen it. He has not responded to anything specific. If his case was strong, surely he would have been critical in pointing out some of the elements or some of the content of that indictment. This kind of a broad, almost abuse, if you like, that this is a witch hunt, that America is in decline. This is standard Trump stuff to the extent that it's become almost stale. It's become predictable. We can almost anticipate that a few hours from now, this is again the kind of thing he will say. We are waiting to hear a specific response, and this is a serious charge, and it is the specifics that will decide the outcome.
Right, it's the specifics that will decide the outcome. But when has Trump ever, given us specifics? I'm also joined by Ray Locker, who's joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Locker. A former US president has now been arrested over this entire classified documents case. Your first reaction to that? This is quite a watershed moment in American politics and in American history. At the same time, even a watershed moment for the Republican Party with the presidential elections right around the corner.
Well, my first reaction is it's about time. I mean, he took documents that weren't his to take. He kept them in an unsecured location. He showed them to other people. He lied about having them. He moved them around so people wouldn't find them. He lied again about having them. And now he's got no defense. So It's about time this happened, because if it was anybody else, it would have happened a long time ago.
Right. So you're saying that it's about time that this happened. Of course, there were a lot of charges against Donald Trump. Suddenly, this has stuck when it comes to, nailing him, when it comes to all the legal woes that he is facing. But I want to, look at the visuals that are taking place right outside the Miami courthouse. You have scores of Donald Trump supporters rallying around him. He has called this entire thing a witch hunt. When it comes to the kind of the finer points of a legal case against Donald Trump, Mr. Ray Locker, it never really matters, does it? It never really matters what are the charges against him, what is the conviction against him. He is still Teflon Don within the Republican Party, who has this cult-like status within one of the two big parties of US politics. And right ahead of the US presidential elections, you even see his opponents within the Republican Party are not willing to call him out because they fear his supporters.
Sure. Well, that's their own cowardice, and that's their problem. I mean, Chris Christie, the former New Jersey governor, has finally seen the light. I mean, after multiple times when Trump disappointed him, Trump even gave him COVID and Christie supported him. So he's finally come around. I think other people are ready to do that too. If they were really afraid of him, they wouldn't be running for president. I mean, Mike Pence, his own vice president, running for president now. They're all making these tepid attempts to try to differentiate themselves from him. It's going to happen more and more and more as time goes on. Trump leads now. We've seen leads evaporate. There's a lot of polling. I don't really take much of it seriously. I think he does have a hold on about 35% of the primary electorate. And if there's a multi-candidate field like the one we have now for a long time, that'll be enough to get him the nomination. But it's still early. It's only mid-June. And things don't really happen until February. So a lot can happen between now and then. And I think the cumulative effect of all of his legal problems, plus the stress that everybody felt during the 4 years of his presidency, is going to catch up to him.
Right. But, I've heard this before as well, that, this is like a turning point when it comes to Donald Trump's political career, that, the Republican Party could rally numbers against him. But you see the commitment by which not just the MAGA Republicans within Congress, but also on the street, how they rally around him. The crowds, the cheering, the posters, the placards, it tends to spook other Republicans into compliance. And Ray Locker, I want to bring this point up as well. You talk about Chris Christie. It's rehabilitation with Donald Trump is never off the table. Oftentimes you see a Republican will be criticizing him one day, next day he'll be supporting him. We see it with Lindsey Graham as well. We see it with so many other Republicans that, when it comes to politicking, they'll go against him. They'll call him an embarrassment. They call him this. They call him different names. But when he wins, when he rallies the supporters, that's when they change their tune. That malaise in the Republican Party doesn't seem to be over anytime soon.
No, that's to their everlasting shame, too. I mean, Lindsey Graham said, if we nominate Trump, we'll be wrecked and we'll deserve it. And the next thing you know, they're out playing golf together. Lindsey Graham is a total weather vane. You never know which way the wind's blowing with that guy. Others, I don't think Christie's coming back, but stranger things have happened. And it's just amazing the hold that this guy has on party members, mostly because of his devoted following, which I think is not quite as rabid as it may seem. I mean, after all, this is Florida. There's tons of weirdos down there. You can get, a few hundred people to show up outside a courtroom for Trump. Now, maybe not every day. So I just don't know how long this lasts. I think this indictment is damning. If you read the facts in the case, it's all pretty clear. He could win in a trial, no doubt about it, because trials have a way of, going in weird directions, particularly with this judge who seems like a total outlier. So, but I think long-term, this is not a good thing for him. Is this the absolute turning point? I doubt it. But the cumulative effect of all of this, the New York indictment, this indictment, the one that's probably going to happen in Georgia, the one that may happen with January 6th, people who are, openly saying they're not going to support him or that he's not telling the truth, like William Barr, as former attorney general, that's adding up. And I think the reckoning will come. I just don't know what day that will be.
Right, but we are in a situation, Mr. Locker, that the facts don't really matter in US politics. I still remember the Russia collusion hearings, nothing happened. I still remember when it comes to that phone call he had with Zelensky, you even had, the whistleblower testify in front of Congress, nothing happened. He lost the elections. The Republicans didn't even agree to certify the elections. They all rallied around him. And so, the facts really don't matter. It's all about the political power that this man enjoys. And regardless of the legal troubles he faces, he still enjoys a lot of political power because he has a cult-like status in the Republican Party. And Sanjay, this point we bring up time and time again. This cult is so tough within the Republican Party. Even the moderate Republicans, the smart Republicans, the McCain level Republicans like a Mitt Romney and Adam Kissinger, even Liz Cheney, even though she was not a favorite of the Democrats, she still has taken a principled stand against Donald Trump. Yet their political position does not rise, their political stock doesn't rise within the Republican Party when it comes to facing off against Donald Trump.
I don't believe we should assume that this is an unstoppable cult. We have seen him facing a huge setback in the midterm elections. We have seen Trump lose an election and as incumbent, which is quite unusual. So there is a great deal of support that he did not get in the elections. There is a great deal of support he did not get, therefore, even among Republican voters, not enough to have turned the tide to get him back into the White House. So there is a limit to the infallibility of this cult power that we sometimes do project on him. Without doubt, you are absolutely right. In the face of all facts, in the face of all logic, in the face of all reasonable expectations, Trump has prevailed time and time again. Whether this will therefore continue forever and continue particularly past this issue of national defense is far from certain. We could be seeing the end of that cult run.
Right. And Mr. Loco, I want to ask you, when it comes to a significant base of the Republican Party, which is the moderate Republicans, which are not the the MAGA supporters, the QAnon supporters who tend to rally around Donald Trump, even though they're the most vocal, I think they get the most media attention. At the same time, the moderate Republicans who are the McCain supporters, the Mitt Romney supporters, do you think that there is a fear within the Republican Party among the sensible Republicans that our voter blocks will shift to Joe Biden's Democrats if we continue to rally around Donald Trump? Is that a fear that still exists among them? And can they do anything about it? Because it seems, as per all the opinion polls, as per the trend in which the Republican Party is going, that they are likely to pick Donald Trump as their candidate for the presidential elections.
Well, I think those Republicans you describe, who are Republicans because of, tradition or their beliefs, many of them are scared to death that Donald Trump is going to be their nominee again. They don't like him. They don't want to vote for him. They're not Democrats for legitimate reasons. You have to talk to each one for those particular reasons. But the Republicans I know don't like Donald Trump. They consider him an embarrassment, a circus performer. And they don't like it that he's hijacked their party. And many of them do not vote for him. They're voting, maybe not for Democrats, maybe they're not voting at all. They'll vote for other Republican candidates on the ballot, but they won't vote for Trump for president. And so that is a legitimate fear among those circles in the Republican Party. The man has lost the popular vote in the last two elections by 2.9 million to Hillary Clinton, by 7 million to Joe Biden. Only by the fluke of the U.S. Electoral College did he become a president in 2016. He lost in 2020 fairly overwhelmingly. And I think that would happen again. Previous commentator mentioned the midterm elections. Those were an embarrassment for the Republicans who thought that they would do tremendously well. And they didn't in large part because Trump-backed candidates in a lot of swing states crashed and burned because they were not appealing to swing voters. Nothing has changed. He is not appealing to swing voters either. And so the political professionals in the Republican Party who want a different kind of government are looking at this going, here we go again, and it's not favorable to them.
But Mr. Locker, it's about the energy a candidate can generate on the ground. At the end of the day, let's face it, when it comes to the presidential elections, be it the Democrats versus the Republicans, it's about who can charge up the base to come out and go to the polls. We saw in 2016, Hillary Clinton wasn't able to do that with the Democrats, which is why Donald Trump was able to kind of like whiz past her, primarily because the electoral college factor is something we cannot ignore. The voodoo of the electoral college is something that decides the next American president. And to an extent, is the problem with the Republican Party currently that they feel that when it comes to the swing states, the Florida, Pennsylvania, even Arizona, do they still feel that within the gamut of Republican Party leaders, Donald Trump is the only one who can secure the majority of the swing states if it's a face-off against Joe Biden?
I don't think they believe that. I don't think Trump can beat Joe Biden. I mean, Biden has weaknesses. He's old. Everybody knows that. That's his main problem. He'd be 86 years old if he finishes a second term. That's by far the oldest anybody has ever been. And that is a demanding job. And it's hard on anybody, and even somebody in their 40s or 50s. So that's Biden's weakness. But, Trump's not a spring chicken either. So that kind of negates that weakness against with Biden. And most people say the choice between Biden and Trump, they'd pick Biden. So that's a problem for Republicans. He's not going to carry the swing states. What has made Trump more powerful in Arizona and Georgia than before? I don't think anything has. We just saw again today more positive economic news. The inflation rate continues to drop. That helps Biden. The war in Ukraine and how he has rallied people to support the Ukraine government, that helps Biden too. The economy is going fairly well, although not everybody recognizes that. There's really been nothing that strengthens Trump in the swing states, since 2020 election. He's been indicted twice. He'll probably be indicted twice more. The January 6th revelation. So Arizona, Georgia, I don't think he's stronger there. He may be stronger in Florida, which used to be a swing state and for some reason has moved away from that. Ohio, no longer a swing state, but new states are kind of coming into play that I think are going to make it tougher and tougher for Trump.
Right. When Mr. Locker, I'm looking at Twitter, I'm looking at all the reactions coming in from the Republican voices who are saying we are here today outside of the courthouse in Miami to show you that we are standing with you against this witch hunt and weaponization of the government. The narratives have already started. The narratives have already started in favor of Donald Trump, and to an extent, I don't think any major Republican leader will come out and say it's time for us to move on. I think they will get swept into this entire narrative about defending this man just to take on Joe Biden. Sanjay, do you think that'll be the way the Republican Party will swing in the days to come? Because the fight and the narrative war has just started.
I think we should not read too much into a number of demonstrators outside the courtroom, particularly those that we see on camera. You can position your camera at the point you choose, collect 20 people and have a crowd filling the screen and say, this is what the people want. We need to be a little watchful of that. We need to be watchful even of the actual numbers on the street other than what the camera can pick up. We know that there were an estimate for about 50,000 demonstrators. Certainly what we are seeing is a fraction of that. So even if these small numbers were to be indicative, we do not have indications yet of a massive turnout. And speaking of scenes that you might see on the street, if I may indulge one little memory. I was in San Francisco and the USS Enterprise was sailing by, and everybody dropped everything to run to the shore and cheer and applaud. For Americans, defense is the ultimate. They worship their defense forces. They worship their defense capabilities. This is the ultimate. It's like God to American people. To see a compromise on that is not something a lot of Americans are easily going to absorb for the sake of Donald Trump.
Right. I'm also getting a reaction from Mike Pompeo, who's also reacted to this. Trump had classified documents when he shouldn't have had them. And when given the opportunity to return them, he chose not to do that. That's inconsistent with protecting America's soldiers. And that's quite rich coming in from Mike Pompeo, isn't it, Ray Locker? You have some Republican voices who are turning on Donald Trump. Of course, Kerry Lake has come out, giving her support to Donald Trump. She herself is playing the Trump card when it comes to the fight for the Arizona governor that she lost. But also, we also have Republican Congressman Ken Buck, who's made a very interesting point. He just told CNN, I would not feel comfortable with a convicted felon in the White House. He's not even ruling out the fact that Donald Trump could enter the White House.
I mean, yeah, Ken Buck's a former prosecutor. No wonder he wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And Mike Pompeo, for him to say that is remarkable. He's actually showing some backbone for the first time after being, supine in his role as CIA chief and Secretary of State for Trump. He obviously knows better. He's not a stupid guy. He's actually very intelligent. So more and more people are, stepping up and saying this is not the right thing to do. And Kerry Lake, I mean, my God, what a lunatic. I mean, she was nobody a couple of years ago, and now she's somewhat a voice for this lunatic fringe among the Republican Party. Took a winnable governor's race in Arizona and lost it because she was too extreme there. And you got to realize Arizona is one of the most Republican states in the country, or was for a long time. It's been trending away from Republicans because of demographic issues and because of the extreme Republican candidates they've had. Blake Masters in the Senate, Kerry Lake is for governor. This is a state where Republican Doug Ducey won the previous two governors' races fairly handily because he was not a lunatic. He was a responsible Republican elected official. So Trump and his allies have taken that state and thrown it away. And I think more and more people realize that. And it's encouraging to see the reactions of Pompeo and even Ken Buck, who, for a long time has been a very conservative member of Congress.
We're also getting a reaction from Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, who has blasted the DOJ over this arrest. She has said the targeting prosecution of a leading political opponent is the type of thing you see in dictatorships like Cuba and Venezuela. So that is the pitch coming in from the Trump team against Biden. But as Ray Locker is pointing out, Sanjay, this is a moment within the Republican Party for them to take a very critical decision. Do you think wiser heads will prevail? Because we haven't seen that happening in the past.
It's possible to believe that a lot of Republicans will be naive, but I'd like to think that a lot of Republicans are not about to commit harakiri. If the Republican Party membership were to nominate Trump, there is going to be a whole series of consequences arising from these cases that will be hovering above the presidency, hovering above the US and above the Republican Party. Whether the great majority of Republicans are going to risk that is far from certain. As we've been hearing, it is not true that a Republican is a synonym for a Trump fan. There are plenty of people in the Republican Party who do not want Trump, who are rallying around some of the other candidates who are contesting against Trump. No doubt the number of these will narrow down, number of these that stay in the fray will get stronger and stronger in time, and there is very likely to be a very credible rivalry opening up to Trump within the Republican Party.
Right. I want to give the final word to Ray Locker over here because we've been discussing the dynamics within the Republican Party ad nauseum. Given the fact that Donald Trump has now been arrested, Ray Locker, your kind of take on the Republican Party in the days to come. They have a presidential election upon them. What do you think the turning point will be? Do you think this is the turning point, or do you think that to a great extent, given the fact that Teflon Don has faced so many legal hurdles in the past and come out on top, do you think this will be a repeat of history?
What I think is going to happen is you're going to have the caucuses in Iowa, the primary in New Hampshire early next year. If Trump does not win one of those states, whoever the winner is going to see a surge in support. And I think you're going to see the support for Trump evaporate fairly quickly. I know it doesn't look that way now, but I think people are looking for an alternative. And if the alternative seems to be acceptable to a lot of people, and I don't know who that is it Ron DeSantis of Florida? Is it Tim Scott or Nikki Haley of South Carolina? Is it even Mike Pence? If somebody looks acceptable, I think a lot of people gravitate to that alternative because the thought of running Trump a third time really is abhorrent to so many Republican primary voters.
Right, but I'm getting this reaction from Jim Jordan, the infamous Jim Jordan. Ray Locker, I'll just give you the final word. I'll read out his tweet. He said, one standard of justice for the Biden family, another for the Trump family. Everyone sees it. I'll give you the final word.
They don't see it, because if there was any evidence, they would see it against the Biden family. There isn't. They had this committee checking into it. They had nothing. All they have is innuendo and talk. And if they had the evidence, they would have shown it, and everybody would have gone along with it if it was credible evidence, but it's not. So he can say all he wants, but he hasn't delivered.
Right. Thank you, Ray Locker and Sanjay Suri, for joining us on this great discussion when it comes to the dynamics in the Republican Party after the stunning arrest of Donald J. Trump. The former president of the United States has been arrested by the U.S. Marshals. He is in custody now as this long legal battle now kicks off when it comes to the classified documents case. What does this say about the Republican Party? Because as you can see in those visuals on your screen, many Trump supporters continue to rally around him. Voices are emerging from within the Republican Party to cut out Trump from the grand old party of the United States. But at the same time, the MAGA base is only circling around Donald Trump to protect him, to protect his political image. Will this arrest raise his political clout, raise his political stock as we head into the election season for the presidential elections? Or will this be the end game for Donald Trump and the MAGA movement inside the Republican Party? We'll have to wait and see.